especially like with nursing home cases, how many people go into those charts? A million. I'm going to format and filter to just that one doctor or that one nurse or whatever the case is, and then I will concentrate on that. So then that's also way more cost effective because I'm not trying to go through every single. I literally just filter to who I want and the time frame that I want.
Hey out there, welcome back to the Nursing Home Abuse Podcast. My name is Rob. I'll be your host for this episode. Today we're talking all about audit trails, how we can use audit trails to develop the story of our case, figure out where the nursing home might have gone wrong in the case or maybe gone right. Sometimes audit trails, it's the opposite. It bolsters the defense. But we're not having that conversation alone. Today we have Maria Hagen on the show to talk about audit trails. And let me just say this, Maria brought some perspectives that I had not thought about for audit trails and using audit trails in your cases for me. So definitely stick around. I think we had, in my opinion, an excellent conversation. All right. But before we get into that terrific conversation, it's time again for the nursing home regulation question of the week. And as always, it is your opportunity for me to beg you to enter the contest to win this Nursing Home Abuse Podcast mug. Well, how do I do that, Rob? Well, it's very simple. You go to our TikTok, which is @JusticeForResidents. You're going to scroll, because there's 1,000 videos. You're going to scroll and look for a can of corned beef hash. So once you find that thumbnail that has the corned beef hash on it, you're going to comment the answer to this week's question of the week, as well as your favorite way to eat eggs in the morning. And the reason why it's corned beef hash thumbnail is because the only way that you should be eating your eggs is over extremely easy and then deposited on top of a big pile of canned corned beef hash. Not real corned beef hash that you might get in some deli in New York. I'm talking about the thing that comes out of the can that you get for 89 cents at Kroger. As my father used to call it, poop on a stick, but not poop. Corned beef hash is the greatest thing, and when you mix it with over easy eggs, get out of here. It's the best thing in the world. Anyway, that's how you're going to enter to win this mug. It's a fantastic way to consume your coffee with your corned beef hash and 2 eggs over easy. So we pick a random winner, but let's get real. No one's doing this. I'm basically just talking to no one, not even the Dirty Dozen. Not even the Dirty Dozen that listens to this show every week has entered this contest yet. So, but just for the sake of this script that I have to read, that Gene makes me read, we'll pick one random winner and announce it on Sunday on our TikTok, as well as our website, schenkfirm.com/podcast/giveaway. Prize ships at the end of the month. Now it's time for the question. Difficulty level for this week, folks, I think is easy based on the way this question is written. Sometimes it's hard to come up with these questions. Let's just be real deal Holyfield on this. I think at this point, we're reaching the bottom of the barrel of how I can draft these questions to make them easy, medium, and hard. But anyway, I think this is an easy one. So let's see how you do. If you get it right, you get an extra scoop of ice cream. Here we go. Under 42 CFR 483.40B1, what must a facility ensure for a resident diagnosed with a mental disorder or psychosocial adjustment difficulty? Is it A, that the resident is immediately separated from other residents to prevent disruption, B, the resident receive appropriate treatment and services to address the assessed problem, or C, the resident is provided psychological counseling if the condition worsens significantly? And that answer is B, all residents, irrespective of their psychosocial issues that they might have or their clinical condition, must receive appropriate treatment and services to address whatever problems are uncovered during that assessment. All right, folks, now it's time to get into the meat and potatoes of the episode. As I mentioned, we're talking about audit trails, but we're not having that conversation alone. We have the tremendous Maria Hagen on with us this week. Maria is a dedicated emergency room nurse with 13 years of experience caring for patients of all ages. Passionate about both nursing and legal nurse consulting, she takes pride in serving as an expert witness and explaining the complexities of ER care. Maria specializes in interpreting audit trails and uncovering critical case details. Beyond her profession, she is a devoted wife and mother of 7. Wow. So that's like the audit trail of who's been leaving the refrigerator open for so long. Balancing her expertise with a deep commitment to family. Maria, we are so happy that you've been able to spare a few minutes with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So like this is like audit trails for most attorneys, and I would imagine the public, it's like the Sasquatch or like Bigfoot. Like it's just this legend, this mystery thing that people hear about, but they've never seen it, or they don't know what they don't know what it looks like. Okay. So kind of from a 40,000 foot view, let's start with the first question. Like when we say audit trail, what are we talking about with respect to nursing homes?
So audit trails is they're like timestamp of everything that anybody does in any medical chart. So nursing home, hospital, anything. If anybody accesses the medical chart, it shows. So any interaction of any kind, if you open it to look at something, if you open it to chart it, if you are looking at results or anything, you can see how many times somebody opened the chart. What time did they do it? Did they backchart anything? Did they look at anything specifically? So it is kind of like the backbone of every single interaction that anybody, and it doesn't have to be a medical provider. It can be like, like a governor or something. Like if anybody opens that chart, we can see it with the audit trails. And that's obviously something that you cannot see with what the defense attorney give us, because they're not going to give us all that information. And so it's like so into detail about what anybody is doing in a patient's medical chart.
So what does the audit trail look like? Kind of once you have it, like what is it? Kind of like you see like a progress note, and then it'll say like the time that it was made, et cetera, et cetera. Kind of walk us through kind of in general, understanding that every system is different, but typically what does it look like?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked this question, because I think that this is a like attorneys think that you get this information and everything is in there. So I'm so glad that you asked this question, because when they give us the audit trail, it should be in an Excel form. So then you have columns. It is like columns, like you usually see the patient's name, the provider, time, and then like different things like actions, reviews, or something like that. And then you have like a whole like thousands of lines that go under like this. So then you have columns this way and lines, kind of going down. And then after that, you have to, and that's why it's so important to know what you're doing, because if you just look at it, you're just going to see columns and it's not going to mean anything. So once you start like kind of looking into it, you can see like, okay, so then this person looked at this so many times, but you can't see exactly what they're looking at or what they're doing. So what I do is I look at each person or whatever the case is. And then after that, I have to request additional discovery. So it's not just like I get the audit trails and I have all of the information. Getting the audit trails is just the beginning. So like the audit trails is just like the treasure box. You know that it's there and you can see the outside of it. And then you're like, okay, I know that inside of there, I can see that somebody per se like modified a note, or somebody deleted a note, or somebody never looked at, this chart for 20 hours yet. There's a note that was backcharted for that time. So you know that there is like really good information. So then from that, you open this treasure box and then you tell the attorney, okay, now I need to request this following information. So once you have that, then you'll start getting in like the information that is more specific to that case. So like, let's say, like a nursing home case, and they are, I don't know, they laid him down while he was eating, right? And then they had a G tube and then, aspirated. That is like a very common thing. And unfortunately, it is a very common thing. And then, oftentimes they're like, oh no, like, the patient was sitting up, everything was great. And then I'm looking at, the audit trails. I'm like, no, this note was never put in at that time because nobody opened the chart at this time. So it is impossible that note was put in at that time. So then I start looking at kind of the trends, and then you're like, okay, well, you put this note in 2 days later. So kind of makes no sense that you're saying that when he was sleeping at night, you put him up while he was eating. So it is just, the audit trail is just the beginning. It's like an Excel form. And once you figured out what information you can get out of that, then you open the treasure box and you ask for additional information. Does that make sense? It is a
It,
little bit hard to explain.
no, it does, and that guess is so interesting to me. So because I guess what I've always thought is the audit trail is not correct. So like in a lot of my cases, I'll say, hey, give me the audit trail of the chart or whatever, and I'll get in some instances I'll get like and I'm trying to visualize in my mind, I'll get like the care plan and it'll have like, whatever the objective is. And then in italics, it'll be like updated on this day by this person, or in italics, deleted, or and in line throughs. But I guess from what you're telling me, that's not the audit trail. I'm just getting something else, because the audit trail is
Yes.
basically almost raw data that's in an Excel spreadsheet format.
Exactly. That is exactly what it is. And a lot of the times the trainers will give it to us in a PDF form, which sometimes you can get that. You can get some information out of that, but they should be giving us an Excel form, because then you can like filter your columns, right? So if you're just looking at one person, especially like with nursing home cases, how many people go into those charts? A million. I don't care about every single person that went in there. So I'm going to format and filter to just that one doctor or that one nurse, so whatever the case is, and then I will concentrate on that. So then that's also way more cost effective, because I'm not trying to go through every single. I literally just filter to who I want and the time frame that I want.
So Maria, you're doing your work. Okay. You're trying to find cover ups, weird things, anomalies. Okay. But what are you literally looking at? Like so on one, maybe you got two screens, you've got the Excel spreadsheet, and then the chart is, and you're going from, you're looking at the audit trail and then putting that against the chart itself. Is that kind of what you're doing?
Yes, that's exactly what I do. So I do have two screens. So then in one I have the Excel audit trail form, and then I have the chart, and then I'm looking at things that don't make sense, or sometimes the note is way too perfect, right? Or like, especially what something happened and they're explaining why that wouldn't have happened, and it's like, that just seems way too fishy that you are charting exactly the opposite of what happened, right? So then I'm looking at what time things were entered. So that is basically what it is, like what time things were entered. And sometimes I can tell that things were entered. Let me try to explain this. So like, let's say that an incident happened at 2 p.m., right? And nothing was charted from, like, I don't know, 9 in the morning until 2:30. And then at 2:30, I can see right after the incident that this nurse was, or doctor, whatever, was looking, because without it, remember, I can see anything. So if anybody's looking, just like viewing, not really charting anything, I can see that as well. So I can see that they're going back and forth with every incident, everything after 2 p.m., right? So then you're looking at this 20, 30 times before you write this note. So why did you have to look at everything to write this note? Is it because you want to make sure that everything makes sense before you put that note in? If you knew that you were going to put this note in, why didn't you just put it in? Why were you looking at results, at labs, at things to put in something that should have been put in 5 hours ago? So I can see, like, and there's a really, really big part of it too. I can see how many times you were looking at something in order to put that note. Where if you were just going to put the note because you knew that you, for example, could, set the patient up, why did you have to look at all the incidents and all the other things that happened just to put that note? So then you kind of like start tying in the whole story together. And then you come up with, I think this is what happened based on the information that I'm being given. I can tell you that this nurse did not open the chart for 10 hours or 5 hours, whatever it was. And then after the incident, she was hoarding this chart for, 20 minutes looking at everything else, and then decided to put this perfect note in there. So
And
then I can see that she was not, or he was not in that chart at all for hours and hours. And then an incident happens, and now everybody's hoarding the chart. And then everybody, like, sometimes you have administration, you have people, like, everybody looking at the chart, and then this perfectly, magically lovely note appears explaining how everything was lovely until it wasn't.
in my naivety, in my inexperience, I always just kind of considered looking at the audit trail for simple things, like you put in this note later when you weren't even in the building, or the note, you deleted this thing, which would have been detrimental to the nursing home side of the story and added something that was detrimental to the plaintiff side. Simple things. You're talking to me about looking at like a perfect note and then looking at how possibly that came into be by who was logging in and then what they're looking at. That's a really interesting perspective I've never thought about.
And then like a lot of the times it happened, like I just went to court a couple of weeks ago and it was like a note that was, put in like hours and hours later. And then they're like, the defense attorney is like, well, he was really busy. And I was like, yes. And I can't tell, in the ER, like whatever, we're busy. But then why did he have 52 times, like 52 chances to put this note in? If he was so busy, he could have put it in 52 times before. So then that is another thing. Like you can explain, like, yes, I'm not saying that nurses are not busy or doctors or whatever. We are so busy. But if you were so busy, how did you have time to look at this 52 times and put this 5-word sentence like hours later if you were so busy? Does that make sense?
It does. And again, that's another example of like there's so many ways that you can use the audit trail.
So many
I
ways.
never considered that. Like I
Mhm.
was too busy like to chart this, but trust me, I did it. Well, if you're too busy, why is it 52 times that you're in the chart? Wow.
Exactly.
I never thought
Yeah.
about that. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And I think like having a nurse like review these audit trails is so important because we live through this well. I mean, we are in the healthcare, like profession, so we know how things happen. We've seen nurses backchart. We have seen him, and we backchart all the time. Like I'm not saying that we shouldn't backchart. That is unrealistic. But when you are charting 6 or 7 hours after a patient died, and then you're like going back and look at things, I know what they're doing. Like I live in these hospital walls and nursing home walls. Like I know that, so it is very, very interesting. And it opens like a whole new world about how to look at medical records. Like I was looking at medical records before I took the auditor class. And then afterwards I was like, oh my gosh, how like was I even right about these other ones that I did? Because there is so much information that I had no idea that it was there. Now that I know that I can get it, it's like I can never look at a medical chart again without audit trails. Never. I can't. I'm always like, well, did this really happen? Or what was happening with this and that? So
Tell me,
yes.
tell me about, so it seems to me that you described kind of like a first pass. So you get the audit trail and then yeah, I think you said it's just the beginning of the treasure box. Um,
Correct.
what are some of the things that you might see that you might then have to go back to the attorney and go, hey, request this, this, and this? Like, what are you looking for to get in that second pass typically? Or give you some examples.
So like some examples are like when I see that there was a note or vitals, like let's go, vitals. I see that there's vitals put in at, every hour, right? And then all of a sudden patient didn't do good and then COVID. And then I'm looking that nobody opened this chart at all. And then I'm seeing like, well, nobody was in here. So this vitals couldn't have been put in at that time. So then I have to, but then I look like, 5 hours later or whatever, whenever it was that this one nurse or PCT or whatever was in the chart. And it's like, it shows like modified. So like they're doing something to the chart, right? So what I request is I request every single modification that nurse or that doctor, whoever you're thinking about, did in that specific time. So like once they were in the chart, they were like interacting with the chart. I want to see exactly what they did. So then I, request that. And then you get like a whole, at that point, it's like a PDF file and then document, I'm sorry. And then it tells you like, okay, so at this time he clicked on this, he opened this, he looked at this, he charted this, he went back and did. That was not a good example. I'm sorry. Let me tell you about a doctor. So doctors put in notes and then sign them 3 or 4 days later, right? That is not it's not unusual, right? But what they can do between that 4 or 5 day period, they can go and modify it and they can add, delete, whatever. All you get is that final draft that the doctor did. You don't have anything in between, right? With a medical chart, you see like it was started this time and signed this time. Okay. What I can do with the audit trails is I can request that specific note and see every single modification, deletion, addition, whatever they did, I can see exactly what steps they took if they were pending that note. So, let's say like, that they started charting like, a patient was doing great, like all the medications were giving, like good. And then the next day they're like, maybe I'm thinking about changing this medication or this tube feeding. And then the next day, like, now I added this. And then like 3 days later, you have this perfect note saying like, oh, patient was doing wonderful, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden the medications were not changed. But then you can go back and be like, no, but you like, we're kind of thinking about that this was, that this was happening. So then you can kind of get a full story of what's happening just to see what that doctor was doing in there, changing things, addition, modifications, or I mean, sometimes these notes can be nothing, right? But when there's a bad outcome, unfortunately, you do see some kind of documentation changes one way or the other. I don't know if that kind of explains what you were asking me.
Those are perfect examples.
It is hard to explain, but like once, I don't know, have you ever had anybody like do an audit trail for you, like actually do it?
I've only done it one time, and this was years ago. So like I'm assuming things have changed since then. So
yeah. So like once you get like that first audit trail, and then you see the initial, like what I was talking about, like the initial treasure box, and then you kind of start seeing like how everything starts evolving and how all the information you start to get, then it just makes so much more sense. It's kind of hard to explain without, like really seeing one, but it's just, there's so much information, so much, literally is like the treasure box.
So what you've been describing, like, do you have any, like, is it the same for point click care, for example? And I know that point click care is probably one of the more prominent medical record systems for nursing homes in the country.
Yes. So I think like audit trails in general, like the idea is the same with every one of them. With different type of EMR or point of care click or whatever, all you have to do is just kind of know how that one works. But once you start doing them, then it's kind of like the same thing, like when they were in, when they were not, when they were clicking, not clicking. I think like once you have done a few, you get like a really good idea of how to do things, and then you just kind of go back and forth, just kind of figure out how that specific system, does it, or
right,
what it has.
What advice would you have for any attorney that might be on the fence about audit trails in a particular case?
I think that if you're on the fence about getting audit trails and having somebody look at them, you have to do it. Like you will never look at a medical record the same way. Like at least if you didn't, because sometimes you're not going to find anything. I'm not going to say you're always going to find something, but at least if you didn't find something, that you still got the full story of that case. Versus if you don't know, I mean, if you didn't get it, you don't know. You could have had that like one note that was like that made your case that much stronger, or like just something that it is so good and it's there, and by law these places have to give it to us by law. So and that is another thing, like if you're having problems getting this, I can help you, or some other people that have been through that class, they can kind of write that email for you saying like according to the ASTM, you have people, I mean this nursing homes have to.
It's a part of your medical record. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Well, Maria, thank you again so much for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge with us.
No, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me here. And I really hope that more attorneys start to get these audit trails and just get the full story of every case that you have.
Very good. Well, folks, I hope that you found this episode educational. If you have any ideas for topics that you would like for me to talk about, please let me know. If you have any ideas for guests that you would like for me to talk to, let me know that as well. As always, please, for the love of God, get a Nursing Home Abuse Podcast mug so that I don't have these taking up space at my house anymore. New episodes of the Nursing Home Abuse Podcast come out every single Monday. And with that, folks, we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to the Nursing Home Abuse Podcast. Nothing said on this podcast, either by the host or the guest, should be construed as legal or medical advice, nor is intended to create an attorney-client relationship between the host or their guest and the listener. New episodes for now are available every other Monday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on your favorite podcast app, as well as on YouTube and our website, nursinghomeabusepodcast.com. Again, that's nursinghomeabusepodcast.com. See you next time.